a playlist original.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to Blockbuster with your host Gaius and Jackson. A little leftover anniversary episode from 2024, but we still wanted to get it in. Or I mostly wanted to get it in because I really liked the movie in question, and when I pitched it to Jackson, he said he was down to do it. So better late than never. But we are talking about Closer, which came out in December of 2004, so it's 20 years old now. I really wanted to discuss it because I actually really like it. It's probably like one of my favorite movies.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I say that because I have no familiarity with this movie until I saw it. I don't know that I'd even heard of it, and until I watched it, there was one scene that once I saw it happening, I realized I had like seen in a clip or a reel at some point in the past, and it's like the scene between Clive Owen and Julie Roberts. Yes.
Yeah.
So that scene, I was like, oh shit, I recognize this. Anyway, that's interesting because of all the movies we've ever discussed, if this has come up, I've forgotten about it. That's just
no, I don't think
I don't know that it ever had come up between us. I didn't know anything about it, but so this is
I don't think I've ever brought it up to you. Yeah. I don't think I ever brought it up. I know when it's funny on its 20th anniversary, Mark posted it on his story, and he wrote like 20th anniversary, and I hate this movie. And I was wow. And I was like, oh, that hurts. And he was like, oh, well, he's like, actually, I haven't seen it since it came out. So he was like, I was like in high school.
It's a long time to go without seeing 20 years.
Yeah. He was like, maybe young teenage me just didn't like it because it felt so depressing. And
I don't think I would like this if I was a teenager. Like it's minimalistic. It's very dialogue. It's like I can't wait to hear how because I honestly it was my first watch. I went in with no expectations, and I'll get into some of like the viewing a little bit later. But I'm interested more. This is sort of like for you. I want to know what you thought about it, what it is you appreciate it, because I still feel like I'm kind of absorbing it and didn't really know
all of it. Yeah,
how to take it exactly or what it was. But I looked at it as like a very pessimistic view of relationships,
like relationships and love.
Yeah, almost kind of like a marriage story, but or just marriage story, but not exactly quite the same, but same sort of threads maybe. But yeah, what's your experience with it? What did you want to get off your chest about this movie? I'd like to hear.
So I don't know if I made the mistake. I saw this in theaters, and it was with a girl I was dating at the time. So it was
I watched it with my girlfriend too.
Probably not the best thing to watch on the date because it I mean, granted, like we were young and definitely not going through any of the things that these characters are going through, but I think it just kind of like still at that age you can identify like with some of those adult themes, and then as I got older, like looking at the movie, I was like, oh, I actually know some people who are like that kind of beaten down and battered by like relationships. That like I have one friend in particular who is like this, who is always chasing something more, like just like something's just not enough. And I feel like that's what some of these characters in the movie are doing. Like they think they know what love is and they get what they want, and then like that is not enough to fulfill whatever needs that they're that they think that they need. And like then like that's why they kind of like they're very adamant. Like there are a couple of characters in the movie that are very adamant that like this is what they want. This is why they are going for those things that they want. And then when they get them, it seems like they're easily not duped, but easily like convinced to like sway another way, because like this one thing that they think they desire, this doesn't excite them anymore. And like they're always chasing like some kind of high. And that's what it kind of feels like these characters are chasing. But when I first saw it, I really liked it because I like dialogue driven movies.
Same here.
This movie is based on a play, so I think you can kind of tell when you're watching it that it feels like a play. And actually, Clive Owen was in the stage version too, but he played Jude Law's character in that.
Okay.
And I think it's really well written. Like there's some lines in the movie that like still stick with me. Like I just really love. And I also think this is the first time I actually really paid attention to Natalie Portman, I think. At the time,
This would have been the one, her big movie post Star Wars,
yeah,
right? Like this kind
yeah,
of helped the trajectory of her career, I imagine.
yeah, like made I felt like she was doing like something very adult.
Mhm.
And and Mike Nichols, I guess like she felt very comfortable working with him because she had done like a play with him, like they used to do those like kind of plays in the park in New York, and she did one with Meryl Streep that he directed,
Oh,
and
cool.
she was younger than like the rest of the cast, but she had reservations about doing like, even though she doesn't get naked in the movie, like playing the stripper and
Mhm.
doing a lot of adult things, but like
Well,
Mike
she
Nichols
filmed nude scenes that were cut, so she
that were
still
cut
was willing to go there,
to
which
do
I
it.
thought was really impressive for her at her age and that very vulnerable. Because watching the
Yeah,
scenes in the club that she works at, I'm like, that is very vulnerable for an
yeah,
actress to film, and to know that she went even further and it didn't make the cut of the movie. I was like, that is bold. Good for
yeah.
her, I guess. Is that, I don't know if that's the right way to
Well,
put
I
it.
mean, I guess
It
like
takes a lot.
she's talked, and he's since passed away, but she's talked like really highly about Mike Nichols, who like she said that I think she mentioned like one of the few people that who was older than her that like as a mentor director, like there she said there's not a lot, there's only maybe a handful that weren't creepy to her, that didn't try to objectify her, and she felt very comfortable with him, which is probably why she felt at ease even doing some of those scenes in the movie. But as a film itself, I think the older I get, the more I appreciate it and the more I like it. And I
And
think
that's
it's
how I
because
feel I'm going to think.
I think because I think like I want to believe I'm not like any of these people, because like they are very like you said, they have a very pessimistic view of love and relationships and commitment and all those kind of things. But
Mhm.
I think the older I get and the more experience I get with different people and different walks of life, and I kind of see these things in other people as I get older,
Yep.
I appreciate the movie a lot more, because it's like, oh, like this isn't just like something that was just written and these people don't really exist. Like these people do. And there are some people that really kind of like have those kind of views about relationships, and they're not pretty, and you know, they're not really if you were like trying to talk to a friend like this, like they probably wouldn't even encourage you to like pursue any kind of meaningful relationship, because like
Yep.
you might get hurt, you might get blah blah blah. They would tell you about all the negative things that come along with it. I get a lot of shit for liking movies like this, because like I have a few friends that actually love it, and I have other friends who are like, they thought it was depressing, and they're like, it's just so like dour, like why do you like it? But they're like, but you like movies like this, like you like, you know like most people watch movies to escape, and he's like, and I feel like sometimes you watch movies like this because like they're oddly cathartic to you, and like sometimes they
Yes.
are like pretty
100%.
cathartic to me, and this movie can be pretty cathartic to me. Like, and sometimes when I like am having writer's block, I will like put this on, because like, I think it just like, I think it's just really well written, and like it kind of motivates me to write better. And
Interesting.
but yeah, it is, and like it's so crazy. And like I guess almost 2 years that you've been on here, like I really don't think I mentioned this movie once to you at all, as being
Yeah,
like a favorite.
yeah, there's nothing that I definitely don't think it wouldn't surprise me if it came up, like if you were listing something off and you named it, but nothing beyond that for sure. But the only thing that I really, and I wouldn't even have known it was from that movie, but I did recognize that iconic shot of Natalie Portman with her pink hair. So I
Yeah,
just never would have known it was from this movie.
yeah.
Um, but yeah,
And
no, this is a movie that's eluded me for years.
yeah, and before I get into like kind of what you kind of initially thought of it, just let everyone know that it came out in 2004. It's directed by Mike Nichols, written by Patrick Marber, who actually wrote the screenplay based off his 1997 play. It stars Julia Roberts, Jude Law, Natalie Portman, and Clive Owen. Um, I mean, there's not a lot of plot here. You just have two. We have four people and almost like intersecting couples,
Right.
uh, whose paths kind of cross. Uh, some some by accident, literally by accident. Jude Law's character and Natalie Portman's character cross paths by accident, and
Fate, I guess.
fate, yeah. And
Yeah.
that actually, if you ever watch the trailer for the movie, it kind of plays up on that
I did
a
watch it
bit.
after because I heard that it kind of pitched the movie as like a good-hearted rom-com. I didn't actually feel that way when I watched the trailer. I didn't agree with that person's depiction,
Assessment
or
of
I
it.
guess their assessment of it exactly. I felt like it didn't try to disguise that the movie would kind of get into those ugly parts of the relationships that usually we don't see.
Yeah.
But it did, I guess it did look more like your typical romance movie, but definitely didn't feel like it was disguising what this movie
Yeah.
was all about. But the trailer,
And
yeah, it was good.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to Cliff Notes describe the movie, the plot of the movie to people who are listening. So I guess you have Dan and Alice. Dan is Jude Law's character. Alice is Natalie Portman's character. They do meet by accident. She gets hit while crossing an intersection. He takes her to the emergency or whatever. They have this what we consider to be in most movies like a meet cute kind of. They like flirt. They flirt and they banter back and forth, and like that's how they meet. And then the movie jumps around and kind of like time a bit to when these people are meeting. So then Dan ends up meeting Julia Roberts' character, and at this point, he's written the book about Alice. Alice was like his muse for writing the book, and Julia Roberts' character is a photographer, and she's like taking his photos for said book. And out of nowhere, it seemingly he begins a flirtation with her, and then they become like kind of a thing eventually. And then you have Clive Owen's character, who is a doctor, and because Dan has become so obsessed with like I guess that's where it's best way to with Julie Roberts' character, like he's become obsessed with her. He does something to kind of set up something to embarrass her, but it doesn't really embarrass her. It ends up they end up having their own kind of weird meet cute, Clive Owen and Julie Roberts' character, and then it just becomes like a big like fucking train wreck of these couples kind of like crashing into each other and like
trading places.
I mean, it's hard to describe, I guess, like what the movie actually is, but it really is. I mean, that's the best way to kind of describe it to you. Like once the couples are set in motion, then there is a lot of hopping around for their own various reasons for doing so. But yeah, I mean, what did you as you were watching it, what were you thinking of it as you were watching it?
Well, like I said, I went in with like no expectations. I didn't watch the trailer before I watched it. I was watching with my girlfriend, and it was last night, like as of this recording, and I said, hey, like I gotta watch this movie for the show. Like she likes to join me on stuff like that, and particularly likes when we watch things together that she know that I haven't seen, and that is usually rare.
Yeah.
So I think she was on board for that, and like we just had some downtime. So I went in and like really, I told her, I said, I don't know the first thing about this movie. I don't even know if I'm gonna like it. So just that's all you're gonna get from me. Like let's just go into it together, see what we think. Yeah, and I could ascertain, like I just read the IMDb description, which just read that like these two couples' lives start to unravel once the man from one couple and the woman from another meet each other. And so that's kind of what I told her. And unfortunately, now this wouldn't have been, it wasn't ideal viewing. And like, no doubt this sort of like, I not that I did like this movie. I'll just preface by saying I enjoyed it. I agree. I think it was really well written. I guess I was surprised at how minimalist it was. We're not in a bad way, just like, you can definitely tell this is adapted from a play. Like the main four are really the only characters you spend any meaningful amount of time, really any time with, which was great. But however, I say the viewing wasn't ideal because unfortunately we just had a lot of distractions. I had to pause the movie like 20 times in the first like 40 minutes just to like deal with the dog, go grab food, like you name it. Like there was just some interruptions. So that kind of, and I was starting to get like a little bit annoyed because like I was really enjoying Jude Law's and Natalie Portman's meet cute. I hate that expression so much, but
that's the best way to describe it, I guess.
Yeah. It is, yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel cringy saying it, but it's so true. That's a good way of putting it. But I was down for that. And I liked the momentum that the movie had going for it. I didn't really know where these characters were going, and then as that momentum just kind of got interrupted, so that was just kind of like not the most ideal. But I got to say, like some of those time jumps did take me off guard. Mike Nichols, if there were hints, and this obviously where you've seen this a handful of times and it's a movie you really admire, might be more apparent to you, but as a first-time viewer, some of the context I wasn't too aware of because the time jumps, they really weren't laid out for the viewer, which is fine. I like when you kind of have to pick these things together yourself. But to me, I thought he had just met Alice a few weeks ago by the time he meets Julia Roberts' character, and now
Yeah,
it's
it's
all
been like
seductive between them. And I'm like, okay, so like, and then some of the dialogue lets
it's
you know how long has gone by. But
yeah.
that was interesting. I think a
That was
rewatch
a
would help
Fred's
me.
problem with it, that after that first scene, and then it jumps to them him having his picture taken by Anna, who's Julia Roberts' character.
Right,
My friend was like, how much time has gone by? And then like, I guess like once you listen to it, like it indicates that it's been like a year,
right,
but that they really, the time jumps really don't, you don't really aren't, there's no like kind of time stamp on the bottom that says like 1 year later or anything
right.
like
No,
that.
nothing like that.
Which I guess like, could be a detriment if you're like, oh, like it's jumping around a lot, like where are we at in their relationships and all
Mhm.
that. But I think just because I was so intrigued by the dynamics of them, I feel like for even the first time I watched it, I feel like I was keeping up with like all the shifts that were going on, because from the first watch I was genuinely intrigued by like all of their dynamics. Now, a big issue that I know people have with it is that they don't think there's anyone likable in the movie at all. They think like, everyone is like kind of a fiend in their own way. I mean, like I mean, the one person that you can maybe claim is innocent is Alice, but then
Yeah.
by the end of it, like she's also, spoiler if you guys haven't seen it, she's also a liar too. I mean, it's like she just kind of hops around, it seems like, from life to life to life based on like her whims as well. So
Right.
like, so I guess she is I think she has like really good intentions maybe when she meets someone, and then is probably disappointed and beaten down by circumstances in life, and maybe that's why she
Mhm.
can't stick around as long as she may want to. That was the impression I got from her character by the end of it.
Right, which the ending really threw me for a loop, and we'll get to there and give some
Yeah,
ample notice by the time we get to that last scene. But I didn't see that coming. But I would agree with you. Alice is the most likable, I guess, like as a innocent is I think the word you use, and I agree. But
yeah,
she, even though by the end she is now doing things that if you were, on Jude Law, on Dan's side, maybe you don't so much sympathize with her character anymore. But she gave that relationship her all, and it wasn't until
yeah.
after he coldly leaves her that she now doesn't have any. I think she's totally justified in doing what she's doing, especially in that club scene at that
Yeah.
point, because I think they spent 3 years together, and he kind of brutally breaks up with her, like coldly, and at that point,
So
I don't think
matter
she
of
owes
factly
him.
too. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And like the way he does it, almost like he's doing her a favor. Like, he
right.
like almost like ease his guilt of doing it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think she is the most innocent. But I have friends that think, because like they think she's also deceptive as well. Like she's not really likable either.
well, yeah,
Um,
we do find that out about her. That's for sure.
yeah. But I don't necessarily need. I feel like a hypocrite because like I mentioned in certain movies, like I hate when like all the characters are just mean or just like. But in stuff like this, I don't think it matters. Like if you're writing like characters like this who are like really they're supposed to be flawed, like complicated people, then I don't really need them to be
Yeah,
entirely likable.
and they all
And
are.
I think for the most part, their motivations are explained either through their dialogue or through their actions as to why they're doing the things that they are doing. And I think almost all of them are like, I made that comment about Alice just kind of acting on a whim. I think all of them do. Like I think every single one of them like seem, maybe Clive Owen's character not so much, but it seems like the rest of them are just kind of like living moment to moment, and like, and whatever moment excites them the most, that's what they're going to hold on to until they
Right.
find another one that excites them the most. And very bleak way to probably live your life, but that's what I feel like they're doing.
Hmm.
Each of them.
Um, I gotta say this too, and I know that we haven't really talked about this actress much, but one of the things that stood out to me right away, and while just like looking at the poster and seeing who was in it, was Julia Roberts, who I know we haven't talked about her. I've never been a huge Julia Roberts guy, never been much a
Oh,
fan
really?
of her work, not even really sought out much of her work. Like I can't even tell you. Is she Aaron Brockovich? Is that Julia
Yeah,
Roberts?
she won. She
Okay.
won an Oscar for. She won her Oscar for that.
Haven't seen Aaron Brockovich. I'm just trying to think of
Yeah.
like I don't really pay attention to her, and I gotta say she was one of my favorite performances in this movie. I really liked, and she, even though she does some wrong thing, like I guess like does some shady stuff and is deceptive herself, she at least to me came across as the most guilty or like hurt by her own actions, the most like genuinely upset by hurting others, like of the main four group. So I thought her performance, she really sold that, even though she hides from her husband that she's been with Dan for however long and loves him and has been sleeping with him. Like you can tell that like that scene where she goes, "Oh, I'm disgusting," when she's describing it. Like
she actually feel it. You can feel that she feels it.
She knows that she feels bad. And that whole scene is just masterclass of acting.
So I know that Natalie Portman and Clive Owen, they were the ones that got nominated of the four for Oscars. I think they both won Golden Globes for their parts in it. And I up until Black Swan, of course, I thought this was Natalie Portman's best work until she did Black Swan.
For sure.
But I don't think Julia Roberts gets enough credit for the work that she does in this. Like a lot of people give a lion's share of the credit to Clive Owen and Natalie Portman, who are very strong. I also think they have like some of the best written scenes in the movie, and then Natalie Portman's character has some of the best written dialogue in the movie. Like for Julia Roberts' scene with Clive Owen, where she has to confess that she's been sleeping with Dan, that's their strongest scene. But like Natalie Portman's strongest scene is with Clive Owen at the club. Like she completely owns him in that scene. But Julia Roberts, like you said, that scene where she says that she's disgusting, like you feel that, like you feel that she feels that way about herself. And then just the escalating like argument between the two of them, I still have like the wind knocked out of me by the end of it. Like the vile things that they are saying to each other. And
so that's the scene that I recognize that I had seen before somewhere with no context.
And he just wants her to say it, and she's just like, "No, like, why do you want me to say it?" And he just yells, like, "Because I'm a fucking caveman." That like he needs to hear it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, and then when he like finally hears it, he just tells her to fuck off and die. And like it's just like, I mean, like Julia Roberts, I think this is probably my favorite thing that she's done. Like, I mean, I know she was one, and I know she's known for being like in romantic comedies, and she's really great in those. And she won an Oscar for Aaron Brockovich, but like this is like probably the best thing I've seen her do, and I don't think she gets enough credit for it. Even in the scenes earlier in the movie where Alice definitely knows that something went on between her and Dan, and she asked her to like take her picture, and they start talking a bit more. And like she sounds genuine when she's like "I'm not a thief, Alice." Like she's like it feels like in her mind she knows, like you said, she knows that she's done things that are wrong, but like she has remorse for those things that she does.
Yeah.
And she probably is very aware that she's a broken person too and probably needs some help. But like hasn't gotten that far.
Yeah.
Like I think you're in the midst around a bunch of characters that all clearly need like therapy.
Yeah, definitely. Some more than others, but definitely all of them. Actually, in that scene, like the big explosive one between Julia Roberts and Clive Owen, that scene more than others really highlighted to me. Like, I think there's something, and this is why I think a rewatch is going to go a long way, and why I'm still kind of wrapping my head around. If there's more if there's some subtext maybe, or something beneath the surface that as a first-time viewer I didn't get the chance to appreciate, or maybe I'm supposed to just take everything literally. But I found like in that big explosive scene that like Clive Owen's dialogue is just not how the average person, or how I think anybody in my experience would actually talk or would ask these questions. I remember when like I'm watching this with my girlfriend and he's asking these like incredibly like horrific details about her encounters and like putting their whole relationship on the line. And he's asking like about positions and asking what she loved, like, these really intimate details. And like I was like cringing when he's asking and like she's giving the answers. I'm like, no one wants to really know the answers to those questions in their life, do they? And it just felt like the dialogue was like the things that you would never actually ask, and we're actually hearing somebody say these things.
But like
and I thought that was great.
The way I took it because he's supposed to be very different from Dan. And I think they kind of mentioned that in the dialogue later that Dan is pretty gentle with her, and he's not. But I almost feel like he wants to ask that for different reasons, like to either find out if he's better than him in any kind of way, and also as a man to just dumb it down to like, this is the reason that you want to leave me. It's not anything deeper than this physical encounter that you've had with him. Like, it's not.
That's a good way to look at it.
To know that it's not like about love or feelings. Like, I think he wants to know that. I think there's like a lot of different things and reasons why he's asking those kind of intimate questions. Also, I think because he's a fucking brute. I also think that he's also asking those questions to demean her, to like make her feel like, because like I think that's all. I think all those things can be true. I think I think it shows like a lot of insecurity in him.
I think you're right. Like, it's complex. Like there's a reason why he is asking these questions. Like because you're right. I think it's to demean her and to get her to say these filthy things.
Almost like about herself. Yeah.
Right. And because like as a person, these are the things that he values the most in that relationship. So, like that's the things that he wants the answers to, because that is at his core. He's a very sexually driven person.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So see, things like this, I didn't necessarily administer when I watched it for the first time. I thought this dialogue is so surreal. Like I can't imagine if I were in his position. These are not the things that I would ever ask. But I
remember watching the movie with a friend that's a girl, and when she says like he tastes like you but sweeter, she was like, oh, and she like took out her phone. She's like, I am using that one, and she like put it in her notes on her phone. She's like, that is great.
Oddly enough, that's one of several lines that were later like used in songs. Like that same line is used in the Fall Out Boy song "Thanks for the Memories," which is like so random.
And then that whole line, lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off.
Yep.
But it's more fun when you do it like that. Like that's been used in the song. Like, yeah. Like,
I can't think of the band that it's in there, but yeah. And there's a few other lines too that I recognize. Like that is like used in like some punk rock song or something like that. So, and I don't know if it's like a case of like if it's coincidental or if it's like this movie's dialogue.
Or they just took it from that.
Yeah. But that line in particular, I was like, oh, ding, ding, ding. I recognize that. That's definitely from Fall Out Boy, which I think this movie predates. But
that scene is great. It's rough. I mean, I do like they cut between the two scenes, like him telling, because of him telling Alice and then him and her telling her guys, like a much different dynamic where he's trying to like ease her pain. Like, well, actually he's doing it so coldly, but like it almost feels like if Dan tells her coldly that this is what he feels, and this is how often like he spent this whole time telling her that nothing was wrong, and then he just coldly tell her that he's leaving her and this is what's happened. And it's almost like he feels like he does it that way, it's making it easier on her. Mm-hmm. And I do believe her reaction to it, how like hurt she is by it.
Right.
And then I also think there's the lines that she says to him, which makes sense for what you find out about her later when she starts kissing him and she's like, I'm the one who leaves. I think that she's used to being the one that does that because of how she's lived her life. Because she's not real either. So like, I think that she maybe kind of laid her heart out there for him, and then like it got broken, and then that's why she says what she says. Like when she's like, I'm the one who leaves. Like this is not how this is supposed to go, which is why she just leaves the apartment without even telling him.
It's like the last control that she can have is to like deceive him to go like make some tea and pretend everything's okay. And then like leave when he's not looking. It's like that's her making that decision.
Like I feel like you learn a little bit about the characters like through some of that, where he like when she's like, do you love me? And he's like, yeah. And then she says like, you're lying, I've been you. Like, so she knows that he's like not telling her the truth.
It's like she's surprised to be in the other end of that
of that.
Yeah, which I thought was she portrayed that really well. Like I just bought into that. Like I really bought from her performance that is like her first time being on the receiving end without her even like have to say it.
Yeah.
Props to Natalie Portman for that.
Yeah, I mean, like, what did you think of? I mean, because have you seen Black Swan? Right, like you've seen.
Like, but years and years ago. Okay. She's like, great in it, but
I kind of wish she would have saw this like back then, because like like she had never done anything like this before. at the time.
Right.
So I was complete. I mean, I really only knew her from like I knew her from The Professional, but she was like younger.
Right. She's
than that,
like
right?
12 in that movie.
12. Yeah. And then like of course she's in Star Wars, and then she was in a bunch of weird, not weird, but like rom-com-y dramas. Like she wasn't in a lot of good stuff. She's in Heat, but she doesn't have a big part in Heat.
Oh, she's the daughter of Al Pacino.
Yeah. So like
I always forget that.
But like this was like the first substantial thing I like saw her in, where I was like, oh, she's actually really good. Because Star Wars did her no favors at all. No. And but she seemed like she's so like that scene in the club with Clive Owen, like I feel like she's in control the entire time. Like she's supposed to be. Like he's used to being in control, and he's just not. Like she is like he is like by like the midpoint, he's like crying to her basically. And she's almost like kind of like
she's like fucking grip.
I love like how she delivers the line where he's like, I need you to be honest with me because I'm being pretty honest about my feelings to you. And she's just like, your feelings. Like she's like, what are you talking about? Like these aren't feelings. Like she's basically saying like you're talking about like sex and this like physical thing, and like it's not, these aren't really your feelings. Like you don't know me. Like so these aren't like your feelings at all.
Right.
I think like the relationships are just much more complex, and I think you're right. I think repeat viewings of the movie probably do help with like understanding like just how complex those like relationships and those characters are. Like I think it might be a hard like one-time viewing movie to kind of pick apart, which
for sure.
Which is my bad on that part, but like it's like
nothing wrong with that. I still get to like appreciate the movie as a one-time view, but I just could tell like by watching that there's things that I know that I haven't had the time to reflect on probably yet, or like appreciate that certain movies like are meant for that, or you just pick up things on that rewatch that you wouldn't get that first time around. This is one of those things where I knew the significance of some things I could appreciate on first watch, but I know that on that rewatch, once I know what I know and I'm going to see some of this dialogue and hear with more context behind it, it's going to hit harder. So sorry, go ahead.
No, someone once made an interesting point to me too, that they liked the movie, but they thought like the scenes themselves would work really well as like little short films, like rather than like a whole movie itself. Like they were like some of those scenes like actually like contained or just really strong. But like you said, like some people were confused by the time jumps because there really aren't specified really like how much time has gone by, and
there's some flashbacks too.
And you also, I mean, I guess like you aren't really given a lot of time. You're given like that whole opening with Alice and Dan. You're only given that time to get to know them as a potential couple. I mean, as a couple, like they're just meeting for the first time, so you don't really get to know what they were like together. You're basically having to pick up what their dynamics were through dialogue, and like and that I can see why that might not be for everybody.
Not easy to establish.
Right. But I guess it also kind of like it jumping around a lot kind of goes with the kind of fleeting feelings of the characters who kind of seem like they're just kind of hopping around themselves. Like they don't really
true.
It kind of adds to that a little bit.
I was just gonna say back to the club scene really quick. I love that, like you mentioned, that Clive Owen is completely like at her mercy in those scenes, and like very true to his nature. He's a very like horned up, sexually charged guy. That's how you get control over him. And I love that he's like on his knees, basically like all he wants is her name, and like she's telling him her actual name.
No name,
and she keeps saying it. He keeps paying her money to get to know her name, and she's telling him what we think is an alias or her stripper name, and just to find out that it is actually her name, and he isn't believing her. And like she knows that. Oh, it was such a great dynamic.
So and that scene is really great because it's one of those scenes too. It's like after the movie's over, when you watch it with someone else, they kind of go back to like, oh, she was telling him the truth the entire and they like look at that scene differently. They enjoy that scene more, knowing that is what she was like. Yeah, you want me to be real with you? Oh, nah, I'm being real with you. Here it is.
Yeah,
this is my real name. And he just like I know your name is Alice, and she's like, no. And I love how she doesn't even like kind of flinch. And like
Yeah.
he like gives her he throws like more money at her, basically like, I'm telling you what to do because I'm like throwing money at you, and she just goes again like, my name is like Plain Jane Jones. And he's just like is so pissed off, and she's like, no, she's telling the truth. And like I thought that scene works a lot better once the ending comes into play, because you're like, oh,
Right.
that's again, like it's one of those I guess it is a movie that you have to think and reflect on more once it's over, and then like kind of think back on scenes, and like they become a bit stronger. I don't think I mean, I liked it when I first saw it. I like loved it when I first saw it, but I don't, like I said, I don't think I appreciated it as much until I watched it more and more as I got older, because you just pick up on little things when you're watching it. And I've watched it so many times, like it's so depressing, like I shouldn't watch it, but because it is a depressing movie, but like it
Right.
I love everything about it and love showing it to people.
Does anybody end up happy? I actually found myself thinking today, I can't remember. I remember the last time that we see Clive Owen, I think it's at his office and his exchange with Jude Law, which was absolutely like brutal.
Horrible, brutal.
But does he end up back with Julia Roberts?
And during the whole like kind of montage over that song, like he's in bed with Julia Roberts, like she's awake and he's just asleep, but like they're together, and it seems like they've kind of just like maybe settled for each other. Dan's alone. Dan's alone, and and Alice is like basically gonna take on another like
she's back
persona, I guess.
Not taking on like the street safely again.
Yeah, and probably taking on another persona, like not really being herself still.
She even has a different gait, like as she's walking, like she's much more confident, and her strut is way more pronounced than it was when the movie opens. So it's kind of like the same shot, minus the perspective from Dan. So yeah, I interpreted it as like she is about to she's still roaming around down to run into her next encounter, her next relationship, whatever that looks like.
And probably hoping for someone that will just like love her. Right. But like it's interesting too, because like she's not wholly being herself. So like I think it kind of just puts the lesson there is like no one's gonna really love you if you're not really like completely being who you're supposed to be. Like it feels like she puts on an image based on who she thinks the person she's encounters like wants her to be. Like that's what. Do you not
think that she's being authentic? That she's embracing her authentic self at the end? I took like the airport security guard like addressing her by her name, her actual name. Okay. I thought, like now she's not under any disguise anymore.
Okay.
I also that was the first time that I even realized that was even her real name in the first place. So.
But
that's my interpretation of the first time seeing it. So I don't know.
And the whole Alice Harris thing, because like how he sees it, that they had walked around that location, like she probably just like saw that while they were talking, and just like and just took it. That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. I remember taking it as like that probably is the right way to take it. That she finally
stuck in her old ways and like
but like that might be the best way to take it. That she might be fully confident in herself now, and like it can be herself by the end of it.
That was my interpretation.
And I got 20 years of this movie. I never thought of it that way.
It's like it almost reminded me of the scene in Inception when they're going through customs and Leo gets his passport through, and it's like, he's back in the States and he can be himself again. He's not arrested. He's back to his old identity. It was very much a similar scene when I was watching. It's like, but again, that's somebody else calling her name. Like that doesn't mean that she is leaving, not having learned to live her actual life, and that she's not under another identity. But that was just how I thought like the movie itself, like by adding that dialogue, like actually addressing her by her name, and then we see her walking through the streets of New York, sort of like to me, I don't know. And I only saw the one time. I don't know if it's supposed to, if I was interpreting it the right way, that she seemed more carefree and not burdened by her life in London and Dan. Like she felt so much more like just mobile and free and
alive.
Alive. Exactly.
Yeah.
Except her strut was just so much more pronounced throughout the street. And then you notice again,
everyone's staring at her.
Everyone's staring at her. She's beautiful, but she's walking across the street. on a do not walk sign, which I get is common in New York, but
New
it
York,
also that's how the movie opens is when she's crossing the street in London not carefully and gets hit by the car. So it also makes me think that maybe she is still stuck in her ways, and that is a symbol to show that she is still the same Jane or Alice at the beginning of the movie. So I think there's like conflicting signs there. But
well, that's kind of cool. I had never thought of it that way, and that's cool that you made me kind of see it that way. That's awesome. That it's all always open for interpretation, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know that I'll feel that way when I watch the next time, but I think Dan gets it off the worst.
I think too. Like probably the best way to discuss the movie is like discussing certain scenes because like I guess they're kind of broken up that way. And we already touched on the one with Clive Owen and Julia Roberts, which I go back and forth between the club scene and that scene being my favorite one. It's like toss up. But what did you think of how he got, I guess, Clive Owen's character to meet Anna, Julia Roberts' character, in that chat room? There a lot. I mean, it's a lot of circumstances for that to work the way it does.
Yeah.
But yeah, what did you?
Very out of pocket. I guess like what was funny, honestly, what I noticed the most during that scene is like how people abbreviated their words in like 2000s like text messaging. I was like, oh my god, this is taking me back. I did think it was like an outlandish. I didn't really get what the goal was until he gets her. I get that he's trying to. I didn't get this when I'm first seeing them type back and forth. I eventually understood that he was trying to get like embarrass
her because he knows that she goes to that location a lot. Like she goes to the aquarium, so he knew that. Like, I guess his hope would be like that guy would show up and there'd be some kind of embarrassing encounter, and then it would like embarrass her, and then it wouldn't, and then not work out that way because they.
But I thought like if this is the woman that you're pining after that you can't have but you want, that the best thing you can come up with is to essentially set her up on a potential blind date with another dude. I guess he wouldn't have known what Clive Owen looked like or who he was, right?
Right.
Random dude. So there's I guess he doesn't really realize. But then I love how they, between the two of them, refer to Dan as Cupid for setting them up. I thought that was a slick little.
Like I love that he like kind of uses that. He uses that against him, like that's our name for you. Like it's.
About that scene, there was, I don't know if it's purely coincidental or if this is like some wardrobe symbolism, but I love that in that scene where they meet, Dan tells Larry, it's Larry, right?
Larry, yeah.
Clive Owen's character tells him to bring a white coat so that'll prove that he's the one that he's talking with. And then during the scene where, at this point, while watching it for the first time, I didn't know that they would have still like some future scenes together when Julia Roberts is like making him sign the divorce papers. She's wearing a white coat, and I thought, is this their last scene together? Like where the relationship essentially dissolves. Where in the beginning he had the white coat. I thought that was a cool.
And that honestly is their last like real interaction together, other than like the scene of them laying in bed together at the end. Like that's like they have that. Like that's their last kind of, and then he convinces her
over,
and he convinces her just to get it Dan. He convinces her to sleep with him because he knows how much that will like drive Dan crazy. This is why most of my friends say none of these characters are likable. They're just all fucking evil. But yeah, I love how like Julia Roberts' face is great when he's like, I got the code. She's like looking at him like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And he's like saying like Dr. Larry. She's like, okay, Dr. Larry. And like she's like doesn't know. And then once they piece it together, like I just think it's just funny how that all worked out. That would never happen in real life. But like that's what makes that scene that probably really unrealistic.
It's funny watching it in the context of today. I'm like, nobody is going to do that anymore on the internet. Like how could you think that is a real person? This is before like catfishing would have been like well known and used against people that often. So I understood that while I was watching it. I'm like, this is hilarious to watch in the 2020s because this is just not how this is done anymore.
Yeah.
So that was,
and I love, and Jude Law's face is great once he realizes, because they go to the art show, like he takes Alice to, and when they're secretly talking, like him and Anna, and he's like, oh, my boyfriend's here, and he's like, oh, he's here where? He doesn't know it's that guy, and
Right.
it's basically like, oh, I've never seen each other. Like, oh no, you know each other. Like, no, like you've definitely talked. Like, no, corresponded, and she like is having fun, kind of playing with him. Like, no, this is the guy you like set me up with. And then he gets so like desperate, he's like, no, we have to talk about this, like because he knows it's like completely his fault. That scene's really funny too. I think it's funny to watch them have their conversation and then have Alice and Larry have their conversation, which has nothing to really do about anything other than them just discussing the art and then them kind of flirting with each other too.
Yeah.
I mean, unless just Natalie Portman just has chemistry with everybody in the movie, it just seems like she is just flirting with everyone, with whatever her scene partner is. But like those scenes are really strong. Just watching those two, because like they don't have scenes together at all. Like all four of them, like they don't really correspond together at all. Yeah,
it's only ever
they
two at a time, really. Except for one scene in Anna's.
Like Julia Roberts only has one scene with Natalie Portman at the beginning, and that's it.
Yeah.
The rest of her scenes are with and then she has the two scenes. Natalie Portman has two scenes with Clive Owen, and her rest of her stuff is with Jude Law.
Yeah.
Like Jude Law has like one physical scene with Clive Owen. Like it's just interesting to have like four stars like that don't really all
interact, have no
interact
presence
together. Together. Yeah.
One scene that I was wanting your take on, just because I'm sort of forgetting how it all transpired, what with it being, you know, the only time I've seen it and whatnot, but the flip that Natalie Portman has at the end when Jude Law leaves like the hotel room, like before they're going on their trip to New York, and then he comes back, and all of a sudden she's like, I don't love you anymore. Like, what was the, how do you interpret that scene? Like, what was the switch that was flipped? Did she not love him like at any point during them rekindling, or was it something that he did by bringing the rose back, or something he said?
No, how I took it is that I think that they were willing to forget all the stuff that happened, like forget Anna, forget Larry. They were like kind of happy in that moment, but he just had to know, for his own ego, for whatever reason, he needed to know if they slept together.
Right, Larry. He asks her that. Yes.
Yeah, and like I think like the way I kind of took it is like maybe it brings up something that she doesn't even like about herself. Like she was completely happy in this kind of bubble where they were just happy together again, and like him bringing that up just brought up all the old things that were like issues between them, and also kind of points to like his insecurity too. Like it's the same. He has insecurities the way Larry does. They just kind of like convey them in very different ways. Right. But like, you know, it's very similar to how Larry needed to know from Anna, like all the things that like her and Dan did together. And it's like, and the thing is, like, Dan makes it seem like he can't move on with her unless he knows. And then she does have that line where she's like, I don't like, reasons like she's cutting it off, like I don't love you anymore. She's like, I can't tell you, like I can't really do this, I can't really do that. And then to make sure that like he hates her, she lays it on thick when she's like, so here's the truth, now you can hate me. And then she goes into detail about what she did with Larry. Right. I think for her, it's very similar to how he cut her off too. Like it's very cold. I think that like it kind of ruins the illusion for her that they were just completely happy, and the fact that he has to bring up these old things. Right. Again, he can't just let it go. He can't let it go. And he's so insistent on it, as if like he can't move on unless he does know. Because like there really is no reason for him to know. I mean, every time I watch that scene, I kind of wonder if I was like seemingly happy in that moment, would I need to know that? Like, would I want to bring that up? Would I be like, oh, yeah, I guess there's like an inkling in your mind, like, oh, like I wonder if this thing happened.
That's normal, but ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, yeah, but like, it seems like these people are like kind of just also comfortable in their misery, like they don't even know how to be happy. Right. I think that's another thing too. Like I don't think any of them have had like real conventional like relationships that weren't like kind of muddied by drama. And like, you know, and like again, this is all stuff that we're assuming based on like who we're meeting and like this, you know, however long the movie is. Like like when I'm watching it, I'm just like putting my own interpretation of like who I think these people are and like where they were at before and where they'll be at after. And like I don't really think any of them have had like anything meaningful in their lives ever, which is why they don't know how to handle having anything
Right.
meaningful. And also, I mean, it does speak to like ego, though. I mean, like I have friends that would definitely want to know, like they would
Same.
be,
Yeah.
they would not be okay with like they just have to just know just for their own like, you know,
Hmm.
mental well being. Even though I think it makes it worse
I think
to know.
you'd be way worse off. Yeah.
Worse. But I think that just who she is as a character. I think like 'cause I think it goes back to what she said earlier when she makes that comment about like I'm the one who leaves. I think she's used to being able to like to turn those feelings off,
Right.
and like and I think that's what she does there. I mean, like you're not the first person to ask that too. Like they were like, oh, that seemed abrupt, but like it makes sense for her, like in the
For
moment
sure.
because that's like because at first she says like I can't tell you if I did it, like I can't, so like I'm gonna leave you, and then when he gets insistent on it. And then that's when she's like, all right, well, here's the truth. So now you can hate me. And then, says what she says. And then he kind of loses it. Like, oh, then like, and then like his big issue about it is like, why him? Not like, why did you cheat on me? It's why him specifically, because that's an issue for him. And
Right.
it like he kind of like, because she almost feel like duped by him getting her to confess it because he already knew. Because
Right.
and then she gets upset, even more upset, because he already knew. So she's like, so why would you even like test me by asking me that? So like, it's a really complicated scene, I think. And like you said,
Definitely. Like
probably a
many of
scene
them
that
are.
probably gets, but we
Yeah.
get better like if you watch it again.
Yes.
But I do think it's interesting that like she gets mad because like he already knew. But he's like, I needed you to tell me. And there's no other reason for someone to do that other than their own personal like
Definitely.
it doesn't benefit the other person. It doesn't benefit them as a couple. That was just like something that benefited him personally. Like I need
Right.
you to say the words like to me, and like that's why she gets so pissed off. And then he ends up hitting her, which I know some people don't like how that scene is handled. Like there's like, oh, it's really dramatic. uh, but I think it works. I think the movie as a whole sets itself up to be like that. So by the time the very dramatic slap happens, I was like, I can accept how it was framed and directed and how it was
Hmm.
shot. So yeah. I know it's a lot to take in. I think
Yeah, definitely. Very
the movie.
nuanced story about couples in like their worst moments. I feel like other than the meet cutes of either couple, which were great sequences and like actually genuinely like good stories, all the other moments are kind of like the dark behind closed doors moments
Yeah,
of like toxic relationships. Like there's not much positivity other than when they're first meeting, and then feels like we're seeing the downward spiral of these four relationships.
yeah. What was it like watching it with your girlfriend?
You know what? It wasn't like it's funny. I read IMDb reviews afterwards, and like some people mention, like don't watch with your significant other, or like it might it might make you question your significant other and how much you really know about them, and that's like the core
Yeah,
part of this movie is like how much you really know about other people and how people can be completely strangers, and when you meet somebody, it's just a matter of time before they're a stranger again. I don't
yeah,
think either of us had any issues like that. It certainly got me thinking. I was like, holy fuck, like, am I gonna get like is this gonna make us question things about each other? I didn't really find it did. We also like didn't discuss much about the movie like while we were watching. Like I was pretty
yeah.
invested. I don't know how much if this was really like a movie that
For
she would
her,
typically go to. I think she was kind of just watching for my sake.
yeah,
But at the end, we did discuss the end and the significance of Alice's like that name placard that she kind of borrowed that name from and chatted a
yeah,
little bit about that. But that was really it. We didn't get into anything else about. I don't know what she's thought. I didn't really try to rack her brain about what she thought about it afterwards because it was like quite late in the night when it was all
yeah,
done. But it wasn't. It didn't present any issues or anything like that. Like some people kind of warned that it would. But knowing that, like if I were to rewatch this and would I watch it with a partner? Would I watch it with her again in the future? Like I
Right,
would
you know.
probably avoid these types of like. I also wouldn't watch Marriage Story with like
Story, yeah.
yeah, because it's just like a negative view of relationships, and that's not something you want to introduce.
Yeah. The only
But
time
it's
I
the first
watched it
time
with
watch, so it's whatever.
the only time I watched it with a girlfriend with someone I was dating was the first time I saw it. And I've
Yeah,
never
which
watched
you're
it.
not gonna
I've never
know what you're
watched
getting
it.
into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never watched it with a significant other after that. Now I've found out that they've seen the movie later separately from me.
Yep.
And they're like, have you seen it? I'm like, yeah, I've seen it. They're like, oh, why wouldn't you ever bring it up? I'm like, and then they're like, oh, never mind. I know why. Because it's pretty
Yeah.
heavy. And like you said, I think it shows like the kind of dark side relationships, like, and like you said, the like couples in their worst
Yeah.
possible moments. I think there's like something written in the trailer. It's like the type in the trailer. It basically says like when you believe in love at first sight, you never stop looking. And I think that's what
Yes.
I think that is really what the movie is like these people are just kind of like that feeling of like meeting someone for the first time. I think that's what they're all addicted to.
Yes.
And then once that wears off, and I think like that's why they are always like chasing something else. Like I think that's what it kind of comes down to.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I watched the trailer before we started talking about the episode, so I didn't have that line. When I read that line in the trailer after having seen the movie, it really helped me contextualize specifically Jude Law's characters, where
Yeah.
that really resonated for me. And I meant to bring that up earlier, and I forgot all about it. So I'm glad that you mentioned that line because it really did kind of help
I think it kind of
me
sums up the
think about.
entire
Yeah,
movie. Yeah,
I
like
agree.
basically, like at least for all of those characters, like that's what they kind of like are constantly chasing,
Yeah,
and
and a lot
and
of
that's
them
why
don't even know what love even
what
is.
love
Like
actually is. Like, yeah,
the
you know,
guys in
they,
particular in this movie are so like just throw that phrase around so willy nilly. It's like Jude Law in particular again. It's like no,
yeah,
no, you don't. Like these are just and Natalie Portman actually addresses it at one point. She's like, I
yeah.
can't feel it, I can't
Oh
touch
yeah,
it.
she's like, what is this
These are
love?
just
Yeah,
words. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I think it's interesting too because they kind of represent like two very extremes of what males are like. Like
right.
Clive Owen represents some more like this kind of alpha, like he represents his feelings through like the physical, and that's all he understands.
Yes.
Whereas Dan is very very I won't call him a simp, like that might be the wrong word, but like he really is he lays into what he believes his feelings are. Like
Right.
I think you kind of see that when he's like soaking wet in Clive Owen's like office in Larry's office, basically begging him to like basically leave Anna alone, like because he
Yeah.
loves her. And when he says like I love her, and when Larry just was like boo-hoo, so do I.
Yeah.
Like he like you know, and like I don't even think he loves her at that point. He just loves the fact that like he doesn't want him to have her,
You can't have
and like
Dan
that
have
have her.
her. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like, and I love, even though it's mean, I love how he makes it seem like he's like on his side, and like he kind of like gives him like a pep talk, and he's like crying, and he's like, then Jude Law ends up thanking him, and then
Yes.
and then by the time
Larry's
he leaves, he's like, oh, by the way, I did fuck Alice.
yeah.
And like, and then his reasons for like telling him too, like, you know, like it's not, it wasn't really about love, like whatever. It's more like to really like he told him to get at him, and
Yeah.
because he even admits because I'm not above that,
Right.
you know. And they're just complicated people, man. I like movies about complicated people, and yeah, like I said, I've watched this movie more often than I probably should have because it's so dour. But honestly, dude, if I really need something like to motivate me, I will throw it on. It's like
Well,
this
that's
in the social
interesting. I
network.
love them.
Like,
Yeah.
is this the Social Network and 25th Hour? I will like throw on if I need to like be motivated
Okay.
by something.
Well,
And
I
you
can't
still haven't
blame you
seen
because
the
the
latter.
dialogue is good. No, I've not. That's something that
Yeah,
we got to get in together this year.
yeah.
Is
It
that
had
98? Yeah,
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 so
yeah.
I already had one, but we'll figure it out. Like
For
we'll deep
sure.
dive it or something.
Definitely.
But yeah, like the dialogue in this movie is just really good. I mean, it's interesting too because like when you go to film school, they tell you not to make your movies dialogue heavy. They always tell you like move action, like you don't want people talking too much because like people get bored by that. But like I've
Some
never been
people
like that.
love it as well, though, right? You never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. I know what critics that didn't like it, they complained that it feels like a play. They
It does feel
like
like a
it,
play.
I mean, but like I mean, it's based
That's,
on one, so what are you gonna do?
yeah, I mean, exactly. I don't think it's a criticism. I mean, if you got to know what you're getting into, essentially.
It has a 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert, let's see. He liked the movie. He said the people involved in the film, they are also very articulate, which is refreshing in a time when literate and evocative speech has been devalued in movies. So he liked that about it. Rolling Stone said Mike Nichols' haunting hypnotic closer vibrates with eroticism, bruising laughs, and dynamite performances from 4 attractive actors doing decidedly unattractive things. And the LA Times said, despite involved acting and Nichols' impeccable professionalism as a director, the end result, to quote one of the characters, is a bunch of sad strangers photographed beautifully. A lot of people didn't like. This was also a time when Jude Law was in everything. I think he was in like 3 movies this year. That year, like
Really?
he was a lot of stuff in like 2004. Because he was, I mean, like starting with The Talented Mr. Ripley in '99, he was like the next big thing, and they kind of made him out to be like that. But The Guardian gave it a 1-star review and said Clive Owen was the only actor that portrayed real emotions in the film, saying that the other 3 lead actors could have just been advertising perfume.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, it made a lot of money though. It made $115 million worldwide on a $27 million budget, and they were the only. And Clive Owen and Natalie Portman were the only one recognized really as far as award season stuff. How do you feel about that? Based on, I guess we didn't really talk about Jude Law specifically, but I always felt like he was the weakest of the 4. Not that he was bad.
No,
like,
I think I would agree with that. I think it's funny that because in the initial credits, like we're seeing Academy Award nominee Jude Law and Academy Award nominee Julia Roberts, and then it was just Natalie Portman and Clive Owen, and they're the 2 that end up with Oscar nominations for their roles in this movie. So I thought that was fitting.
Yeah.
I think that if I were to nominate one male performance and one female performance, I agree I would have nominated Clive Owen, and I think I would have nominated Julia Roberts over Natalie Portman. That's not to say I don't like her performance. I think it's great, but I think that Julia Roberts is a more veteran actress, is able to do more with less maybe than Natalie Portman is. But great. I don't know if it's probably say breakout performance for her because she was obviously popular after the Star Wars movies and stuff, and she'd been acting since she was a child. But for her recognition in this movie, to get nominated for the Oscar, no doubt this movie catapulted her, I'm sure, afterwards. And then it wasn't only a few short years.
Time for Julia Roberts, it's probably the most. I mean, not like she's a hateful person, but it's probably the most unlikable person she had played up to that point, because she usually is not likable in her movies. Like, I mean, she was known as America's sweetheart back in the day because she was in so many romantic comedies and stuff. And so this role was decidedly different from the ones that she usually picked at the time. Like,
it almost feels like that role that like a Disney Channel star takes.
Yeah, to I want to show people I can act.
Like Gomez in Spring Breakers.
A little bit, just to prove to it.
Also, Jude Law was in 6 movies in 2004.
Okay, so there we go. And this was this was his last one at the end of the year. So yeah, overexposed. I think he even admits that he was overexposed at that time.
I didn't know that about him. I didn't know much about early Jude Law.
I guess it's come to time where you have to score the movie. I guess I'll let you go first. What would you?
Again, recognizing this is a movie that I'm anticipating, it's gonna resonate with me on rewatch. So, but for my first initial score, I'm gonna give it a 3.5 stars, which is like my wheelhouse. I enjoyed that.
That's your sweet spot.
It is my sweet spot. I liked it. I thought it was a performance-driven movie. All the four performances are really good. I think Mike Nichols. I don't think I've seen anything else. I was surprised to see that he did The Graduate all the way back in 1968. So I thought that was cool to watch one of his last movies. And I know he only died 10 years after this came out, but
yeah,
it made me realize I got to see The Graduate.
Yeah, it was funny as I watched Wolf today because I have to write about it for the website because they want me to correlate Wolf with Wolfman, and I didn't realize that Mike Nichols directed that with Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer. Came out in '94, and when I turned it on, it was like a Mike Nichols film. I was like, oh, he did this? I had no idea.
Is it anything to do? Is it?
It's not based on like the Wolfman at all. It's just like it has elements of it. It's a werewolf movie, but like it's not like it's not like adapted from
no
like the 1941 movie at all yet. But yeah, I had no idea he directed it. Well, I mean, I'm gonna be obvious. I'm on the perfect score. I love the movie.
Oh, I love
like
that. That's great.
I think I probably explained it enough, but yeah, I love the dialogue. I love the acting in the movie. I think I love that it has a lot to say, and I think you will appreciate a lot more like
Yeah.
the more you watch it like down like the line.
Probably
like,
watch it by myself next time, but
Yeah.
and just really soak it all in. But yeah, it's tough to really appreciate something when you go in for the first time without any when you don't know anything about it. But for that being said, there was a lot to appreciate, and for a movie that doesn't have a lot going on, so to speak, it's very minimalist.
Yeah.
So to be that entertaining and thought provoking, and to have such complex characters, and there only be 4 of them, and
Yeah.
only 2 of them usually are interacting at a time. You know, that's doesn't sound like a lot, but that's hard to do, and it's hard to keep somebody engaged with that. So, you know, I thought that's pretty impressive on Mike Nichols' behalf. Clearly a veteran director. He was like in his 70s. I think he was 72 while this was being filmed. So that shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like minimalist movies like that? Or
yes, very much so.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
I think those are some of the more impressive movies, simply because, you know, less is more. I do believe in that as a filmmaking.
I think one of my friends who like also loves movies, he's like, dude, sometimes I see like 2 people in a room in a house. That's it. I don't need you guys like move around. Like, I don't like need you to hop from location. Like, he's like, I don't really care about. I mean, like, yeah, there's certain movies you watch where it's like, oh, look at that set piece, look at that cinematography, look at that, look at that production design. But like other stuff is just like, no, I just want to see 2 people interact, and like that is like that's really all you need. And I think that's what this movie is, just a bunch of people interacting. I mean, like you said, I think it does show people in their worst possible moments, which is why I think some people don't like it, because it is
for sure. It's not an optimistic movie at all.
No, I mean, it's a really kind of, I think it's a really like down with love kind of movie.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think too, if you watch it the right way, you will watch it and be like, I don't want to end up like that. Like that. Like I do not want to have such a damaged view of like what relationships are, that like I can't like possibly see myself committing to anyone like long term, because that movie makes it seem like it's a very like sad existence to live in. Like I mean, it doesn't really show you any positives to doing it.
It really doesn't.
I think that's it. Yeah. So yeah. I'm glad that you at least enjoyed it for what it was. And
yeah, I'm glad we made the effort to get it in, because I didn't really know what to expect, and I know it was a leftover, and I'm glad that you were persistent in us getting this episode in, which was awesome. I know the holidays were busy, and this is our first anniversary in a minute, so yeah, I thought it was totally worthwhile. I would recommend it. I'm looking forward to checking it in. I think I'd probably put a few years between, just so I can come at it fresh.
Yeah, but
yeah, no, it was really solid.
Yeah, I wish I could say that. I'll probably watch it like a month from now.
You can let me know when you do.
Like, you're a glutton for punishment, man.
For me, that's Manchester by the Sea, when I need to go to something like depressing. That's my
that one's rough too.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet, and I think because it's still too new. I could also see Past Lives being like that.
That's one that I can't do yet.
I haven't watched it again since that time that
I want to, but it also like was
it broke me. So I was
like damaging that I know I'm not gonna do myself any favors by rewatching that anytime soon. But I do really want to. That's always in the back of my mind too, when I want to watch something like melancholic or just straight up depressing. But no, I've had the inkling to rewatch Manchester for months now, but maybe the time is near. But in any case, Closer was fantastic. Not as like sad as these other movies are, but it is a very pessimistic view of relationships, and
not sad as it like makes you cry sad, but it's just like do people really have a bleak view of the world like that?
Definitely.
But some people do, man. I know some personally. They're listening to it. I say this to their face. They're fine, but they know who
exactly. Not a date night movie exactly either.
At all. Not.
It's hard to suggest who. Watch it by yourself, I guess, or
watch it alone, or watch it with a friend. You know, like not a significant other, but like.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's worth it. But that was a holdover from 2024, even though this is our first anniversary of 2025. Our first anniversary of 2025 will be Higher Learning, so we can tease that on here.
Yeah.
That's John Singleton's third movie. I haven't watched it in a really long time. I don't think Jackson's ever seen it.
Nope.
some of my black friends are always joking, like, man, show them some black movies.
Well, there you go.
So there you go.
Everything I've seen by John Singleton. I love Boys in the Hood. So if it's
Yeah.
anywhere like that, then bring it on.
So yeah, so that'll be our first anniversary of 2025, and
Sweet.
you can sign
That's
us
it.
on.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you guys have it. That's our little analysis of Closer. Thank you guys for tuning in to check out and celebrate this movie's 20th anniversary. If you haven't seen Closer, by all means, I think I watched it on. It's available on Netflix. Always recommend grabbing a physical copy of any movie you guys watch to protect that physical media. But in any case, guys, this has been episode 222 of Back to the Blockbuster. Feel free to check us out wherever you guys listen to your podcast, or for you guys that have the Playlist Studio app. We have 221 fantastic episodes of the show for you guys to check out, and plenty more coming down the pipeline. As Gaius mentioned, we got some more anniversaries coming up in January, as long as some other episodes coming down the pipeline. My second anniversary on the show is this month, so we'll have something planned for that as well. And next week we'll be chatting about Lee Winnell's Wolfman. So that's just some more stuff you guys can look forward to for the month of January. Hope you guys are enjoying your New Year so far, and you guys are getting those movies in. Give us a follow on Letterboxd. We've got our information on the page on Instagram for you guys to go check us out there if you guys are interested to keep up with what we're watching. And thanks again for listening, Gaius. Always a pleasure. Thanks for sitting me down and getting to chat closer.
Yep. Always a pleasure, my friend. And until next time, peace out.